look at porn every day and masturbate. I thought it was normal. It's really incredible in your reboot how much you can grow and how quick. And there's men who will hear you, and there's men that will see you, there's men that will have bring zero judgment for anything. There's lots of hope. I'm speechless.
I am here with Adam today, who might be a familiar face in our reboot world. This is the second time we're hopping on a testimonial call like this, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. We're going to go more in like a retrospective type of direction, and I think it's really important to hear what this guy has to share because I think that there's a lot of inspirational stuff for somebody who might be kind of on the fence and maybe wondering if hope for recovery and rewiring their mind is even possible. And so we're going to go there today. We're going to have some fun in the process. So I literally said it before we started recording, but sincerely, Adam, thank you for making the time just to share a little bit.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I love these calls, and it's 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 so fun to do this in bits from the beginning to 6 months to now, and just to see how things have changed. I'm
Mhm.
just super stoked to be here. Thank
No
you.
doubt, man. Absolutely. Well, let's start from the very, very beginning as far as how you first discovered the program. Like, how did you first find out about elevator recovery?
Yeah, so I found out about elevated recovery actually through the psychotherapist I'd been seeing for years. So when I was in my early 20s, I want to say 20, 21 years old, I was seeing a psychotherapist regularly for some mental health challenges I was going through. And uh, when we started to go into my sexual history and specifically my challenges with women, my therapist started to ask me questions about my sex life in general, what it's like, what's going on, how I behave sexually, and I opened up to her about excessive masturbation, looking at pornography too much, as in at the time daily. And she just started to ask me some questions like what's going on. And then I think it was actually her that identified I had a problem because at that age, when I was 20, the discussion about pornography addiction wasn't as prominent as it is today. And she was the one who kind of said like you got a problem. And I didn't even know it because I thought it was like the regular thing to do. Like all guys 20 years, 21 years old look at porn every day and masturbate. I thought it was normal.
Mhm.
Um, but it was like far too excessive, and I didn't have a sex life at the time.
Right.
Anyways, so she actually recommended elevator recovery to me. She said, "There's this guy on the internet. He seems to run sort of a niche, different kind of program from your regular addiction recovery. His name's J.K. Amazy, and he has this really awesome podcast called Porn Reboot." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." So she kind of low key plugged him real softly there. And then I joined the podcast, followed it, and I started listening to the podcast for honestly like 2 years straight, I think, listening to everything upload. I was implementing parts of the system, mainly just feelings exercises and and irrational, rational belief exercises.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of my journal, I was writing day one, day two, day three, day four, day five, day six, hit day 30, slip back to one. Maybe around 2022, I was trying it out, trying the system out, and then I completely fell off the rails and fell back into full-blown addiction for another 3 years, with it getting worse, spending a lot more money, a lot more isolation, and then eventually, a few years later, or beyond 2022, I went back to her and she asked me about she brought up my addiction, and something just clicked. I was like, okay, I got to get this addressed right now at the age of 28, or I'm going down a very dark path as a man in my life. So immediately I got to my car after the session when I walked out of her house, and I messaged Gaspar immediately, and I said, get me in this program now.
Yeah.
And I think he saw like the determination in me, and I was like very serious right from the gate. So yeah, that's kind of the story how I found it. I think it's a little bit unorthodox because I think most men find it through social media, but yeah, just a local therapist.
Definitely. No, honestly, there's a lot that resonates with me, particularly the last bit where it's like, all right, I'm 28 now. I was 27 when I first joined, and I had that similar
Mhm.
thing where it's like, beyond this type of behavior, is this the type of person that I want to be for the remainder of my life? Because, at this point in time, on a brain level, we're nearly done with our development, as far as like our own growing as a person goes. And for lack of a better term, it kind of is what it is from this point. So if there's changes
Mhm.
you want to make or values you want to solidify, now is the time, Winter is coming, right? But
Mhm.
but I'm so proud of how far you've come, and we're gonna dive into it. But man, so many questions I want to ask you. But let's start basic. As far as the tools that you've learned, as you know, there's a plethora, right? There are tons of different tools for different aspects of your reboot. But you had mentioned like the rational irrational exercise and things that you've learned from the podcast, but once you actually hopped into the program and were really doing this thing for real, like what have been some of the tools that maybe you hadn't heard of before and have provided you some value?
Yeah, so at first, especially when I just joined the program, the tools taught in the coping skills module, the feelings exercise, irrational, rational, those are really good. I found as a sort of introduction to build awareness about myself. And then with time, I started to maybe upgrade, or I don't know if upgrade is the right word, but adjust my tool usage to tools that I felt were a little bit more comprehensive and kind of captured, the feelings exercise and dialogue in it, namely dialoguing. Dialoguing is my favorite tool. Speaking to addicts of personality, as well as other key personalities and myself. And for me, I have like a sub personality who's sort of ego and ambition. I have one that fears failure and different personalities and just speaking to these personalities and kind of integrating even a feelings exercise in the dialogue or irrational rational in the dialogue has been really really helpful. So dialoguing is definitely my go-to tool. And then recently I've really enjoyed the understanding your urges tool. It's been one of my favorite ones. So identifying sort of the feelings I'm wanting to feel in the moment of an urge.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm feeling maybe I'm feeling sad at the time and I want to feel happy. And using that tool to really understand what else I can do in the moment to not succumb to that sadness and just really understand what my mind, my emotions, my body need at the moment. So those have been some really good tools. And then, some of my favorite ones as well. I'll always I'm gonna put a wind wall on my gravestone. That's what I'm gonna do. I don't want a fancy one. I just want one laminated. I'm gonna duct tape it around the gravestone, and
So funny.
that's what I'm gonna die on. So that's been one of my favorites, and um, of course, if I guess maybe we call it a tool, but just reach out to an AP as well and having a conversation with another human that understands what I'm dealing with has been really helpful. So yeah, those are some of my favorite tools.
I love that. That's so, so cool. And a lot of the tools, if not all of them that you mentioned, they have a common theme of notice, and that's that increasing that sense of awareness. Like what's
Mhm.
going on internally to the point where it's affecting me externally, as it's often said in the group. How has that intention of getting curious about that, getting introspective, like really pouring into that sense of awareness of yourself, how you tick, what bothers you, where does your joy come from, like how has that process impacted your reboot?
Oh, that's a good question. The process of building awareness as is in rebooting my life, it's knowing yourself without being on autopilot. So
Hmm.
in life, I feel like as we're conditioned, unless we had excellent, emotionally just harmonistic parents and our upbringing was supreme, I feel like most of us come into the world with not understanding the relationships between our thoughts and our feelings. And if we can build, we can understand how they relate and how they're a lot of times separate, you're no longer on autopilot. So, we go through all of our life, we experience a failure and we have all these emotions that come up from failure. And then they create this narrative about who you think you are. But it's not true. It's just the feelings, and you get to pick what your story is based off of what you write about yourself. And that's freedom. That's emotional freedom. That's mental freedom. Yeah, that's the way I would describe it is like building that awareness on my reboot has taken my experience in life off of autopilot and has put it into my own hands. And once I got to that point of like agency in myself, I was like, okay, we're good now. Like we can handle what life is going to throw at us, regardless of what it is. And once you keep doing that on repeat, I started to learn what self-compassion and self-love is. That's made me cry numerous amount of times where I just realized like I don't have to beat myself up anymore. I don't have to, spiral. I don't have to do this. I can show myself some grace and not allow old stories to run the show. That's my answer to that question. Maybe I was speaking in the clouds a little bit, but
No,
that's the truth.
no, that's good, man. That's really, really
Uh,
encouraging. And sort of a segue from there, I'd love to take a trip down memory lane and show you a clip or two of the last time you and I hopped on a call like this. So let me share my screen really quick. All right, so let's listen to a little bit of June 2025 Adam. What's he got going on?
Kind of just stops after that in life. And we kind of forget what it means to feel your feelings and um, process them and digest them before making a decision. So Dr. Eastman and Orestes, Reboot Hero 1, they've taught me how to feel and let go of what's going on. Huge in my reboots. It's a superpower, man. A superpower. As silly as it sounds, feeling your feelings really is a superpower. Um, Milan as well. I mean, excellent call. He'll take any limiting belief you have and break it down piece by piece and show you, okay, let's start.
So, he's going on sharing about his time on the program, but the thing that got me was, particularly what you're sharing about now is how far you've come as far as, like you said, that awareness piece, that feeling what you feel. If you can kind of narrate maybe what was kind of going on life wise, reboot wise, as you're sharing this, and there I am throwing my head back laughing. June of 2025, from what you can remember, what's going on with Adam at this point in time, from what you can recall?
I recall there's a lot of cheesing, a lot of smiles, and I remember in June 2025 I was coming back to life. That
Mm.
was maybe February, March, April, May, June. That was 4 months into my reboot, and I remember being so amped up about the small the the basics of the program, being able to feel your feelings, being able to understand your mind. And I mean, I'm just smiling because I'm seeing how enthusiastic I am and how I'm really into it. Um, I remember just at the time that was like what I would call the repetition phase, like lots of feelings exercises throughout the day, win walls daily, like just grinding away in a good way to learn myself. And I was slipping lots still, but I was using the program and seeing some early results. And oh man, it makes me look I feel like I'm looking at a younger brother.
Oh, talk about that. Talk about that. What's that feeling?
It's just a feeling of it's just kind of like a nostalgic feeling. Like I feel like I'm just looking at somebody who was brought back to life and somebody who felt some joy again, felt some hope, felt some enthusiasm and optimism for the future. Almost brings a tear to my eye, but that's crazy. I feel like I'm looking at a different person.
Wow.
And I mean, even from that point to when I started, I would have also said I was looking at a different person. But it's really incredible in your reboot how much you can grow and how quick. And man, I'm speechless.
No, that's great, man.
Yeah.
That's a really, really awesome feeling. Well, maybe listen to one more insight from Adam from 2025. Let's see what's going on with him.
You are loved, and your addiction doesn't define you. And there are men who will confine in you with love and no judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. I really, really love that. So, as far as it seems like, solid advice as far as, anybody who is either considering whether or not they should join the program and, what they should expect and things like that. But, beyond what Adam is sharing here.
You're really struggling or not, be honest with yourself. Take an audit of your life, see what's fallen apart in some ways, and acknowledge you have a problem. And there is help. Go for it. It's 110% worth it. And I can promise you, only being 4 months of the program, do the work, do the very deep work, implement, and particularly dive into breaking the cycle and some of the real hard, uncomfortable work on who you are. Let that out. Bring it to the coaches, bring it to the Reboot Heroes, bring it to the brothers.
Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll share with you what I hear kind of as far as just like as your Reboot Hero. Here's someone who's very bright, very eager, very intelligent, and is understanding the concept of the importance of that deep work that you alluded to and why it's so important. Flash forward to Adam in February of 2026. I'm looking at someone who has carried it out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
On top of what you're sharing here, I mean, with what you've learned and what you've experienced up until this point, for someone that might be listening or watching, is there anything you might want to add, with this experience and, these new states of gratitude, intact? Like,
Yeah.
what else might you share,
When I watch this, I just keep thinking, wow, look at that go-getter, eager kid trying to get after it. And I love that. I love that I as a I really I like that I'm able to go in deep and kind of get obsessed about things for a period of time to really learn something in a healthy way. And to add to that, a description I made as well, and what I was grateful for was how you got to go in and do the deep work and acknowledge your pain and surrender to your pain and to really kind of dive into the waterfall and just go for it. But what I'll add to that is with time and as you approach your reboot definition and you build that awareness, it gets to a point where you feel more confident in yourself and what you've gone through to the point where it's not like it's no longer like a full part-time job. And it becomes like sort of a maintenance thing in a good way where you can dive right into it and really learn the system um and just really do the upfront work, especially in the first 6 months. And then once you build that awareness, you build that confidence in yourself and knowing who you are, knowing your triggers, knowing your emotions, knowing what emotions you're sensitive to, knowing which stories or narratives can kind of come in your mind, and you know how to manage it. And a lot of the times now it's just like, okay, this is a time I should journal. This is a time I should dialogue. I should check in with myself. That could be 2 times in a week. That could be once every 2 weeks. That could be, it could be, you know, it's like 3 times in a day if it's a really bad day. But it's about building that awareness and knowing yourself. Yeah, being in my point now, it's just a really freeing thing to know that you built that skill set and you have enough compassion and love for yourself to want to do it because it's not a one-stop shop. You don't just do it once for 6 months and then poof, it's done. It's a skill set for life.
hmm
And it's a skill set that's going to be used until I'm dead. And it's it really becomes after a while a lifestyle. And at the time, I don't think I really knew that. I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go for it forever, which I was totally fine doing because I was having fun. But after a while, and as I matured in my reboot, I realized it's yeah, once you get to that point, you're in your reboot in your life, it's about enjoying the work when you really need to do it and when it's the right time. And that's a very freeing thing as well because you get to start working on other reboot capital. You get to grow other areas of your life, and you get to enjoy life with this lifestyle and framework to live by. So yeah, a kid was getting after
Yeah, he was, man.
it.
And he's continuing to get after it, man. And I'm
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
proud of you. And it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. The best is yet to come. So
Hmm.
before we wrap it up and pack it up, pack it in, with all this excitement and with all this awareness and growth and healthiness that has emerged through your experience up until this point, if there's someone who might hear what you're saying and be inspired and be encouraged, like, wow maybe recovery is possible. Maybe rewiring my mind can absolutely be a thing, but still might kind of feel stuck in their ways or might kind of feel on the fence and suffering in silence as far as what to do. And maybe there's no one I can talk to, things that you and I know about very well. Is there anything you might want to share to someone like that?
Yeah, first thing I would like to share is that it's very much possible. It's very much possible. You don't buy a ticket and it just happens. You have to earn it through showing up and staying accountable to yourself. But being in this for a year now, I've shown myself that it's hope is there's lots of hope there. There's an abundance of hope. And that's my reboot definition now is abundance. And I think that's what happened when I joined the program is I changed from feeling scarce, feeling this sort of well, we'll see if this works to this can work and I'm going to make it happen. That subtle mind shift. And also like for those feeling really stuck and hurting and you feel like there's no solution, what I would say is in this group, nobody is going to judge you for surrendering to pain
Hmm.
because society will not want to hear your surrender to pain and that it's tied to compulsive sexuality. Unfortunately, that's where we are. But that's just it is and there's several brothers in the group that are just coming to my mind that are really doing this right now. You surrender to everything and just choose to let go and to accept the problem, accept the pain in your life where this is coming from, and just to kind of put down your sword because it's not a battle, and just to submit to where you are and to really just be like, okay, I'm hurting, and to bring that to light with the group. Everyone is going to want to support you with that, and it's more just like it's a surrender. It's a surrender to everything, and I promise you, there's lots of hope. There's lots of it, especially in this group and the reboot heroes, the coaches, myself. I mean, I we're here for you. And there's men who will hear you. There's men that will see you. There's men that will have bring zero judgment for anything. And there's lots of hope.
There you go. Immerse yourself in the process, and there is lots of hope. You heard it from the man himself who's done it and is continuing to do it. So, Adam, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your insights and all the continued success to you, bro.